I think it's time to talk about the A7 III. Yeah, it's time. So first and foremost, when we're talking about the A7 III, we're talking about a $2,000 camera that is more than just the quote-unquote basic camera. Now, I know Sony likes to play around and say that because they have added so many amazing features. And in today's video, we're going to be talking about what attracted me to this camera. First and foremost, I'm coming from the A7R II, which in many situations was an amazing camera. But when I got my A6300, I realized like the autofocus on the A7R II was nowhere near as good as the autofocus from the A6300. So because of that, I ended up trading my A7R II for a 6500. And I've loved that camera. In fact, you're looking at that camera right now, and that is paired up with an 85F18. I love that combo. But when it comes to overall what I was looking for in my next camera, one of the things had to be was I was excited to try to get my hands on the new A7R III. The specs looked amazing. I already was a fan of the A7R II. Plus they added better focus mode on there, and they had now it was a little bit more user-friendly when it came to full frame 4K, which was one of the things that I really didn't like about the A7R II because it was more of a Super 35 camera. But besides that, it just came down to price. Was I willing to cough up the $3,200 that price that camera called for? And the fact was, I had a 5D Mark IV I was trying to get rid of so I can get the A7R III. But then Sony decided to announce the A7 III. And to me, it blew the A7R out of the water when it came to video features aspects. Yes, the A7R III had the 42 megapixels. And for me, it wasn't a big deal. I wasn't a landscape photographer. In fact, I didn't shoot much photography with it, which is crazy to think because now with this camera, all of a sudden I'm into photography. So now it's truly a hybrid camera. One of the reasons why I love this camera system. So besides that whole story, the 693 phase detection points are amazing. This coming from the A9 body, they implemented into a $2,000 body. Now, the A9 is above $4,000 when it comes to some of the specs. And when we're talking about a $4,000 body compared to a $2,000 body, this has the same autofocus features carried over into the basic lineup, which I was blown away with. And then they added the new color science, which is funny because they did not give that and still haven't given the Sony profile to the A9, which is kind of weird in a sense, but that's Sony, right? So you have picture profiles on here. Love the fact that they added the hybrid gamma log. I'm using it right now for this shot right here. And yeah, this color science is a little bit different from the A6500, but that's a good thing. I don't mind having that color science improvement, even if it's a little bit different. A lot of us do some color grading or color correcting in post anyways, so it's not as hard to match up. But because of the new color science Sony has added into this camera, we get a little bit more true to life colors. One of the reasons why everybody loves Canon colors is because they love the skin tone. They do this thing where it kind of softens up the skin tone, which is, it's pretty cool, right? It's a pretty cool effect, but everybody talks about it like if, oh, I'm just using it straight out of the camera. But the truth is, a lot of us don't use it straight out of the camera. A lot of us use it, we color correct our footage. So to me, it's kind of a wash. I don't do S-Log a lot, but I have started messing with S-Log, 2 at least, not 3. 2 I prefer, and I think it's still a good codec. I know it's only 8-bit and not 10-bit, but it is what it is. We're still getting a high quality, super amounts of dynamic range, which is one of the things that I love about this camera. I have become more in photography aspect, and it has been amazing. So overall build quality, coming from the A7R II, the build quality is very similar, except for obviously the grip is a little bit bigger. And because of that, they added that new Z battery, which is amazing. I bought two. I have the battery that came with it and a separate battery that I picked up. And honestly, I rarely go to it because the battery life on this camera is so good. I've shot multiple videos on one battery. I'm not an event photographer, videographer. I don't shoot weddings. I just mainly do these YouTube videos. So honestly, a 20-minute clip here, a 20-minute clip there is what I use it. And prior to that, with my A7R II and A6500, really, I mean, I was constantly monitoring the battery aspect of it. But with this new Z battery, it's been phenomenal. One of the great things I love about this camera. The grip is good. They added some more custom functions. And overall, this is a true full frame video camera. Unlike the A7R II, where it was more of a Super 35. Now the Super 35 on this is good. It's adequate. It's still shooting a 4K image, but the full frame aspect of this camera is actually downscaling 6K into 4K. So it's super sharp, great dynamic range. It does suffer from rolling shutter, but it's not as bad as it previously was on the other models. And if you're coming from the A7 II or A7 I, this is not even close to being the same camera anymore. You're getting a hell of a camera. This still is blowing people's minds on how good this camera really is. Wow, I am really rambling on here, ain't I? But listen, this camera does have its flaws. Let's talk about a few of them. Well, I'll say right off the bat, one of the things that really irks me about the camera is the stupid little flaps. These things right here. These just get in the damn way, and literally I feel like they're gonna snap off. I almost wanna just rip them off, but I can't do it right now. But these things are the worst. It constantly gets in the way of putting in a cable right here. I mean, it really is frustrating to have. Another thing is, I'm not necessarily used to having a headphone jack. And in one of my videos, I actually had the microphone hooked up to the actual headphone, and obviously my audio was terrible. So that's not necessarily a fault, but my fault. But yeah, that definitely is not something that I am very happy about when it comes to this camera. It really does suck, these little danglers. I do love the fact that it does have dual slots. That is amazing. Having dual slots really makes this more of a professional camera. But we're not talking about the good, because I've already been talking about that all the time. Another thing I don't really like so much is that the screen is not crazy sharp. The back of the screen, yes, you can see everything, but I'm telling you, when you do use this, I have come across a time or two which kind of concerns me. I haven't heard anyone else mention this, but the screen has gone weird. It's gone very buzzy on me, and I'll have to literally turn it to movie mode and then hit record, and then all of a sudden it's like the screen clears up, and then if I go back into manual mode, it'll go back to that fuzzy screen. I don't know what that's all about. Hopefully I'm not the only one having that issue, because if it's a issue that more people are having, obviously Sony was gonna have to address that. But that's about it. The EVF is okay. I can't complain coming from the A7R II. It is what it is. It's not the best EVF, but it's not the worst. And those are my only gripes when it comes to this camera. Let's get back to my fanboying. And that leads me next to performance and imaging. Now, with the performance aspect of it, one of the things that I really was curious about is how the slow-mo was gonna act. Now it's not no longer a cropped in slow-mo. You're getting a full sensor readout when it comes to slow-mo. So naturally it's gonna be sharper. So the 1080p slow-mo, which they give you two options, the SNQ and also just the 120p, it looks fantastic, amazing. I love it. That leads me next to low light capability. I did a whole low light video, which I'll linked right here, but the low light in this camera is phenomenal. Actually beating out in many cases the A7S II, which everyone's looking forward to, the revision of the A7S III. So this camera, I would consider this at this point the A7S III, just because it's that good in low light. It's amazing. And it frees me up to do a lot more things that I was not really willing to do with the A7R II. Yes, it was pretty solid in low light, but overall what didn't have the capabilities, because it was a 42 megapixel. This being 24 megapixels really makes a big difference in how the pixel readout really is performing. So like I said before, this camera truly has made me become well, I don't want to say I'm a photographer or anything, but it's made me start to shoot both sides. It's made me start to take photos and more portraits and stuff like that. Before I was mainly just a video guy, but I really am becoming more of a hybrid shooter. The color science is fantastic at this point. The image quality plus the 5-axis image stabilization works great. As long as you're not really walking with it, but you're just shooting stills, it really frees up the capability of using a lot of different lenses with this. They don't have to be stabilized, and if they are stabilized, obviously we're getting an even better image from it. So with that being said, do I recommend this camera for others? Hell yes. This camera by far has definitely made me, I don't want to say a better shooter, but a more passionate shooter. I've truly become more and more in love with shooting video and now photography. So if you're looking for your next camera and you're looking at this video, I don't know what you're waiting for, besides the pre-orders. They're still trying to, I know this camera's so backed-ordered, but so guys, that's about it. There's not much else I gotta say. This camera is phenomenal. The price is right, but if the problem is trying to get your hands on it, right? So if you guys like this video, make sure you leave a like. If you haven't already, please go down there and subscribe. Leave me a comment of what you're expecting Sony to do next in their new camera lineup. I know that 6700's rumored to come out, and everybody's waiting for the A7S III to come out. But until then, guys, I'll see you around.